the topic, and we hope that at the end of it all we'll have very fruitful engagement. And welcome all. This comes at a very important stage. World leaders are meeting at for COP29. This is the COP that comes immediately after last year's COP, where there was unity or unified voices, and we said that's a COP that signaled the end of fossil fuels. And in the UN SDGs words, he said we have to support developing countries in every way, even as we look at phasing out fossil fuels, even as we look at working towards phasing out fossil fuels, we need to have that transition. Remember, we say that it's the countries that contribute the least towards the effects of climate change that pay the highest price. But then it's the countries in the developing world, or rather the global south, that actually face the most the effects of climate change. We are also the people that are reliant a lot on fossil fuels. And, well, we may not have time to reach there, but then it was a start. So the reliance on fossil fuels for the global south conflicts mainly with commitments to climate. So even as we look towards reversing, even as we look towards issues on adaptation, mitigation, even as we think about how we face our fossil fuels, what does this mean both for the Indo-Pacific and the global south? What does it mean when we talk about, well, economic growth versus emission targets? So as we look at reducing emission targets, what does it mean to our industries that are relying on fossil fuels? What does energy security and transition costs? What does it mean to us as a global south and even in climate leadership? So today's panel will look to address that. One, to give a perspective on where we are in terms of numbers, in terms of data. Two, someone from fossil fuels, someone in the supply chain will give us insights into what they're doing, and we'll also get some insight into policy, into political perspective in the whole issue. So we'll start with you, Meherab, telling us about your work and what you do and how that, or rather the state we are in as the Indo-Pacific.
Thank you, Judith. Very good morning to everyone. It is an honor to be here to discuss this critical issue that affects millions of lives in this region. So my name is Meherab, and I'm the Executive Director of Arcade Foundation. We are a research non-profit based in Bangladesh, and we do a lot of research on air pollution. I'll try to give some of our preliminary findings on what we have seen from our research. But before that, to put things into perspective, that air pollution in this region in general is probably worse than what we understand. For example, the annual air pollution last year was 6 times higher than the WHO recommendation, and the level of air pollution in Dhaka actually reduces the life expectancy of people by 5.5 years. This is a lot. And it is not only Dhaka. You see in the top 10, you see the top 10 most polluted cities. Most of the South Asian cities are consistently in the list. Even yesterday, Dhaka was the third most polluted, right after Delhi and Lahore, right? So this is probably one of the most critical public health concerns for this issue. And I can tell you from a very recent study that we have conducted in Dhaka with the households, we have seen lack of awareness about the entire issue is pretty dominant. Like, people understand the problem with air pollution, but they do not understand the entire story. So when we asked how much, like, about what they feel about the air pollution, like 74% of them actually said the outdoor air pollution is severely polluted, like the pollution is very severe. But only 24% of them actually understood that indoor air pollution is also as bad as the outdoor air pollution. So that shows people do not actually understand the severity of this problem, and that eventually makes people less concerned about taking precautions, how they can safeguard themselves from the pollution, right? So we also seen less than 1% people are actually using any air purification system in their household, where air purification system actually can reduce the pollution by 80% when you're indoor, right? But this is basically lack of awareness that leads people not to adopt this kind of technologies. Where you see many households in Dhaka, they're using water purification system, but for air purification system that is still lacking. When we asked about, like, when we tried to understand what they are willing to spend, what is their willingness to pay for an air purification system, it was as low as $10 to $12, whereas the market price is like around $140. Also, this $140 air purification system, this price is actually higher than the other countries in Bangladesh, and that actually came from the high tariff, the high import tariff, which is around 74%, and there is another VAT on top of that, like 15%. So this pulls this price very high, and also the lack of awareness. People do not actually use this kind of system. We conducted another experiment in small farms, industry level, where we have seen if we introduce air purification system, it can significantly increase the productivity of the workers, which is very interesting because for private sector, this is an incentive, right? So not only an air purification system can improve the health and well-being of the worker, but also can increase the productivity, which is a win-win situation for both, right? I think for countries like Bangladesh, it is very important. Like that we all know that shifting to cleaner energy is definitely the way to go. But meanwhile, we'll have to also think about how we can reduce the impact of air pollution on the public health, and to do this, there are need for series of policy actions for sure, and also there is a need for research and data, because there is severe lack of effective monitoring system in countries like Bangladesh. So we actually do not know specifically what are the pollution hotspots here, and what are the actual sources of the pollution. So if we can generate and make data public on the hotspots and the sources, targeted approaches can be taken, and that can basically cumulatively lead to lower pollution. So it is important to also understand pollution does not respect country boundaries, right? So if an a growing economy, they are generating air pollution by burning fossil fuels, it is traveling across borders. So a regional collaboration, like, we'll have to collectively act on it to reduce the regional air pollution, not only for one country. I think that is it from my end, but I'm happy to answer if you have any specific follow-up questions. Thank you, everyone.
We'll come back to you, but Tanzeem, maybe as we speak around the whole energy transition and coming from the supply chain, the fossil fuel supply chain, would you talk into how that looks for you, how just transition looks for you as we look to even transition households and countries towards clean energy?
Thank you, Judith. I'm sure everyone can hear me. Yeah, the sound's better now. My name is Tanzeem Chowdhury. I'm the CEO of Omera Petroleum Limited. One must wonder why an executive from the petroleum industry is in a panel on decarbonization. I was also asking myself this question. So I'll get into it. I'd like to thank the Center for Governance Studies for inviting me, and also the respected panel members, Ms. Judith, Mr. Touseef, Mehraj, and Mr. Meherab. So I graduated in finance from the United States as valedictorian in 2013, and then I came to Bangladesh and joined Omera Petroleum Limited. Omera, the company, our main products are cooking gas, which we in the Indo-Pacific region, there's different names such as LPG, cooking gas, bottle gas, cylinder gas. We are also in the business of solar. We are doing rooftop solar with a lot of industries in Bangladesh. We're also manufacturing PV modules in Bangladesh and also exporting it to markets in the West. So I'll be addressing two issues on so our main product is LPG. So I'll be addressing two issues. First is the crisis in air quality due to traditional cooking fuels in rural areas of Bangladesh, and I'm sure it also applies to the Indo-Pacific region. And also crisis in air quality that is happening due to deforestation. So there is a lot of factors going into air quality, such as vehicle emissions, such as industrial emissions, also illegal brick kilns. But deforestation and cooking are two of the main factors that are going into it. So I have a study report with me. This was done in 2019 by the household, by Report on Socioeconomic and Demographic Survey, BBS, Bangladesh Bureau of Statistics. So in that survey, it was done to find out what type of fuels are being used for cooking in Bangladesh. 56% of fuels for cooking was coming from wood, from chopped trees. Natural gas and LPG, cylinder gas was only 10%. So as a cooking fuel in rural Bangladesh and also in semi-urban areas, wood and coal and leaves, these are still very predominant. And using wood for cooking leads to deforestation. Using wood for cooking creates a lot of black smoke that leads to lung-related illnesses. And also, at least in rural Bangladesh, a lot of the residents keep their cattle within the kitchen vicinity. So using wood for cooking also leads to poor cattle health. So in 2018 and 19, there was a study done by the University of Chicago and an institution known as ICDDRB in Bangladesh. We were happy to be a part of this study. So there is a village near Dhaka called Arai Hazar in Naranganj, and this whole village uses wood for cooking. So University of Chicago and ICDDRB had a fund where they provided free cooking gas or LPG cylinder gas to 100 households in the village for a period of 2 years. We were supporting as the LPG supplier. So after 2 years, these 100 households that were using LPG for cooking compared to all the other households in the village that were using wood for cooking, the LPG users had cleaner kitchens because there was no black smoke around. They had lower medical costs, lower respiratory medical bills compared to their peers or their neighbors who were using wood for cooking. They had healthier cattle. And very interesting, they had better disposable income compared to residents who were using wood for cooking. So this is all backed by a study between University of Chicago and ICDDRB. It's very interesting. I encourage you all, you will find it on Google, the reports of the study on LPG use versus wood use. So following the results of this study, So I also mentioned that cooking gas users had better or had more disposable incomes compared to wood users for cooking. Why is that? So there is a I would say financial institution in Bangladesh known as ITCOL. The CEO Alamgir Morshid Bhai, he's in COP29 right now in Baku. So I was discussing, so ITCOL is promoting improved cook stoves in Bangladesh, and they're also promoting cleaner kitchens. So I was discussing with the CEO of ITCOL that when so the monetary cost of wood is cheap for a family who's in the village. When they go to collect wood, they don't really pay much, or it's free in some cases. But there is always a time cost involved. For a person to go and collect the wood from a forest and come back to the kitchen, there is a time cost involved. And end of the day, there is a medical cost that is not educated for. So when we compare wood users, when we speak to wood users, we must educate them of the environmental aspects that is leading to deforestation and also the personal effect they're having at their family level. Also, another interesting experience, in 2017-18, when the forcibly displaced Myanmar nationals, FDMN, they were coming into Bangladesh. They were settling in an area around Teknaf, which is south of Chittagong, and they were cutting down wood for cooking, for their cooking needs, and this is a very hilly area. So they started coming in around spring, and right around the monsoon season, there was a lot of landslides because trees were being cut down. And we went to the spot to see what's going on, and UNHCR, who's the host community, they invited us to go and see how we can support them with all the FDMN with LPG. And once they started using LPG, so in 2017, they came, and the whole Teknaf, most of Teknaf hilly areas in the refugee locations did not have much plantation. And in 2 years, it was all green. So that is I would call it afforestation. So this is how cooking gas can help. And we also, we say that 1 metric ton of LPG, if directly compared to wood, can save 46 fully grown trees from being cut down. In smaller terms, 2 cylinder gas can save 1 tree from cut down, the equivalent energy they give. And also, it would be my last point. It's very personal experience for me. It's very interesting. I was visiting one of the villages. So there's village committees in Bangladesh called Panchayat. I'm not sure if it also applies to the Indo-Pacific. So the Panchayats are responsible for handling village issues. So I was visiting a village with the Panchayat. And a villager, a lady, she was telling me that so her husband is, he's a farmer. When he used to come back from farming, he wanted her to heat up the food, and it would take a substantial amount of time because when you use wood to heat up food, it takes substantial amount of time. Once she started using LPG, it was very fast, using gas and stove. And her husband, they were having some domestic issues, and this was resolved after they started using LPG. And I was very touched that this is the level of change we can address when we can bring in cleaner fuels. So I will cut it short. I'll be happy to speak more on later on. So LPG is a great transition fuel. Bangladesh and the Indo-Pacific, we are facing a lot of clean air issues. In addition to the different technology that Meherab bhai, you have explained, I think we also need to think of afforestation, planting more trees, and of course not cutting down further trees. So we are there trying to promote LPG, cooking gas, as a great transition fuel, and I'll be happy to add in more value. Thank you for, I think I could give some interesting figures on clean air. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanzeem, for the data and even for highlighting how that fits into the whole SDG arena. I really enjoyed listening to you speak about the effects of this at the household level, and especially for families and what this means for women, even as we seek to achieve gender equality. So we'll transition from you to Touseef here, who will now give us a view from maybe a policy perspective. And over to you.
Thank you, Judith. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by thanking all of you and the organizers for inviting me to this important conference and giving me opportunity to share my views. I feel delighted to be in Bangladesh, which shares not only its borders but also so much of its rich culture and heritage with my own country. Our national anthems were both written by the same great poet and philosopher, writing in the melodious Bengali language. So, in fact, whatever we sing or whenever we sing our beautiful anthem, we are reminded of our strong historical, cultural, and people to people links with our eastern neighbors. Bangladesh and India are twin engines of development in South Asia, the fastest growing economies for several years now. In fact, in the recent past, Bangladesh has been the fastest growing part of our South Asian subcontinent. As a natural glory of economic growth, our urban areas are growing so much so that it's now difficult to make out the difference between one town and another. I stayed in Gurgaon on my way back from Kashmir. I can tell you that there is no ruler gap between Delhi and Gurgaon, and the rate things are going, there may soon be no gap left between neighbors towns of Meerut, Ghaziabad, Noida, Greater Noida, Faridabad, Gurgaon, Alwar, Sonipat, and Panipat. It's becoming one vast, ever closing urban sprawl. The area around Delhi may be one of the largest urban sprawls in the world, but it's by no means the only one in our beloved subcontinent. Just 40 years ago, only 10 places in India were counted as cities. Now there are 5 cities in Valley in Kashmir, from which I come. I watched my own city, Baramulla, expanding even while I was the mayor of its town for a couple of years until about a year ago. Already one can drive from Baramulla to the nearest city Sopore without crossing a rural area, but in peak traffic congestion, it can take up to an hour to drive the bare 17 and a half kilometers between the two cities. The result of the construction boom in Kashmir and elsewhere across India is that pollution has increased and a lot of dust flies around the roads that mix with the smoke from our engines to make deadly smoke of pollution around our cities. And even some rural areas, jokes and memes about a traffic congestion in Bangalore have become very common. They are funny and yet they reflect a tragic reality and stress and suffering of millions of people on a daily basis in that huge city which has so many world class facilities and features. Plus, of course, there are emissions from the factories and other production, repair, processing, and retail centers. Just one of the many malls in our big cities use so much electricity, particularly our increasing hot summers, that would have been almost unimaginable just 2 generations ago. The irony is that more and more people flock to such air conditioned spaces for longer and longer periods as our summers become hotter and hotter. We are now using air conditions in mountain region like Kashmir, which was unthinkable just 30 or 40 years ago. Not only that, summers last longer and become hotter and hotter earlier than before in the year. Just last winter, when just last winter was so warm in Kashmir in December and even until the last week of January that many of us were hardly wearing any warm clothes or using heaters or traditional bukharis. We seem to be caught in a trap and a spiral that takes us deeper and deeper in problems. On one side, our people want more and more development. In Kashmir, I know from the time I had to run my city that one of the biggest urban problems is parking. Each family wants to have 2 cars and even sometimes more than two. People want wider roads and flyovers and new roads plus more parking space. On the other hand, all the smoke, emissions, and pollution is driving up the levels of the heat. Global warming and efforts in some countries to influence or control the weather by various means is leading to more and more disasters. We have seen the most awful floods in like Spain in recent days, and cyclones and hurricanes and other dangerous and deadly weather patterns in various parts of the world, even in the richest countries. There was a terrible flood in Pakistan just a couple of years ago, which devastated one third of the entire country. The sort of things is partly caused by the melting of glaciers, mainly in the Himalayan region to which I belong. Bangladesh is also prone to the potential for the flood, possibly devastating floods. In this context, we must take the trends towards climate change and global warming very seriously. On the other hand, we must balance our responses with the need of our common people on the other hand. They want a better life with faster communication, more mobility, bigger houses, and better equipment. The meaning of all this is, of course, more energy consumption, more oil and gas consumption, and more pollution. China has been the leading polluter for the last few years, and India too has contributed to much higher pollution levels than before. The rest of the South and East Asia, all the way from India to Japan, is emerging as the leading hotspot of industrial activity as more and more production and manufacturing moves to this region. It already has a large population with increasing demands for better lifestyle and more consumption. All of this means more and more pollution, carbon output, and warming. However, we cannot forget how we got to this point. For most of the past 20 to 50 years, it's Europe and other parts of the West over the past 150 years which have contributed the most of the warming trajectory on which the world is now moving in a dangerous direction. To expect that people in China and South Asia and Southeast Asia will not develop or produce the manufacture and use modern gadgets and drive more cars and other vehicles is an unfair attitude. Those who have done the most damage to the world's environment must be held accountable and take responsibility for the situation that the entire world finds itself in. After all, even the rest of us have never joined the industrial age. The pollution caused by the Western industry would already have put the world on the path of the global warming. Let's not forget the most of the Western industry and transportation was fueled by coal. Trains and ships used vast quantities of coal, which caused far more pollution, carbon emissions, and warming than hydropower and other such means to generate power, which we now use more often. In fact, countries such as ours are turning to nuclear energy. Of course, nuclear plants involve huge dangers, as we demonstrate by the disasters at Chernobyl and Fukushima, but they don't cause carbon emissions and therefore warming as that sort. The other factor that must be kept in mind is that carbon emissions and warming that results from wars is beyond most people's imaginations. Continuous series of war have been fought and often wrongly and illegally manufactured in different parts of the world by the evil war-related industries and corporates and geopolitical backers. Those who are behind the war and conflict industry must be held accountable for their awful contribution to environment as well as the moral pollution of our world. Coming from a conflict zone, I can feel the pain and suffering of our brothers and sisters in other conflict zones. The genocide in Gaza over the past 13 plus months breaks our heart. We all want peace and to live together in mutual harmony. Let us all pledge to work towards the goal wherever we are and in whenever, whatever we can. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Touseef. Maybe I'd like to come back to you, Meherab. And my question would be, looking at the diversity of the Indo-Pacific, what could we do to maybe standardize the various reporting and monitoring systems for one pollution and even effects of fossil fuels on the environment?
I think that's a very great question. As I mentioned previously, it's very important that we work collectively, not only as a country but as a region. So I also mentioned there is a lack of effective monitoring system. So there are some public data, for example, in all of like many of the countries, the measure of air quality. But it is not enough. And if you look at that public portal, you'll see there are some countries, for example, in India, you'll probably see lots of monitors that are collecting data. But in Bangladesh, you'll see probably 10 to 12 monitors, which are not even strategically established, right? So one important thing I would say is improve the capacity regionally. Not only, I'm not talking about only Dhaka or Bangladesh, but regionally we'll have to increase the capacity of the measurement and publishing that data and finding out the regional airshed, which is very important, because if you look at this from the satellite data, so that from satellite you can do some analysis, but from the ground level measurement also important. But if you look at from the satellite data, you'll see there are large airshed overlapping Bangladesh and India, right? So that's one thing that can be done with mutual strategies and hopefully some treaties in the region. So that's from the data perspective, but also that there can be other. So as Tanzeem bhai was saying, cook stoves are very important. So as I said, there are different sources that are basically causing this air pollution. One important is cook stove, but there are also burnt bricks. Just yesterday, I saw the news. The government has decided not to use burn brick in government constructions, which is a very important decision. Because being the largest consumer, government basically creates a lot of demand of burn brick, and that's also like difficult for the competitors to come in. But there are other alternatives to burn brick available in neighboring countries in this region. A regional collaboration can help with right policies, can help bring those technologies that can basically change the current sources and bring in the alternatives that are available elsewhere. There are alternatives to burn brick. There are alternatives to cook stove, not only LPG, but there are some other improved cook stoves. Those can effectively reduce air pollution in this region. Yeah.
Thank you, Tanzeem. Meherab highlights quite a lot in terms of data, in terms of what he does, but his work is like downstream. From where you sit, what does collaboration look like for you? Collaboration amongst energy service providers, then also collaboration with organizations like Meherab's, who are now giving us data and situation as is, and even with policy advocacy and other NGOs and organizations to help us move towards a just energy transition.
Thank you, Judith, for the question. So in terms of collaboration framework, there's three aspects that is coming out of my mind. The first would be creating more equitable access to cleaner cooking fuels for different households. The second would be how to create that access in terms of monetary support, because there's a lack of education on the real cost of using wood. And the third would be collaboration with our policymakers. I think the same can apply to the Indo-Pacific. So first, for the users, for the villagers who are using wood, I would say we are working with a few NGOs now, mostly in North Bengal of Bangladesh and also in Chittagong. And these NGOs are trying to promote something called shared kitchens, where a family, instead of using a whole gas cylinder for themselves, which might be burdensome for them, they have community kitchens where 4 families have access to one kitchen and 1 cylinder gas. So that lessens the burden. We have also introduced smaller cylinders. The regular cylinder sizes are 12 kg. We have introduced smaller 5 kg cylinders that a lot of customers, a lot of users can have access to. And very interesting, we have just, it's been 2 years. We haven't started it at mass promotion. We are promoting something called Pay Go Energy. This is a sort of prepaid system that is installed at the top of the cylinder. So user will only pay for how much gas they're using, even though the cylinder is in their premises. So there's a lot of financial aspects around it, but we are trying to promote it specifically in North Bengal. Now, coming into creating equitable access. So when we look at a family, when they're using wood, we see there is a cost of around, in Bangladeshi taka, 500, 600 taka as the cost of the wood. Then we have to build up the aspects that is not accounted for, the time lost, the economic value, the health cost. And together with ITCOL, we did all these studies and found out that the total cost of collecting wood for 1 month or using wood for 1 month is roughly 1,500 taka compared to the LPG for 1 month, which is 1,200 taka. So LPG is much cheaper. Now the issue is the first time cylinder. When a user is buying a cylinder, we have to support them because the cylinder cost is high. So we are working with different NGOs how to create access to the cylinder for the first time or create first time users who would be migrating from cutting down wood to LPG. In addition to NGOs, we are working with supranationals, IFCs supporting us to do this kind of activities. And this will be done more in the future. And at the policy level, I think at least for Bangladesh, we are at a very interesting time. We very much support the 3-0 policy, the 3-0 initiatives by our honorable advisor to the interim government. And I think this is the way to go. And LPG can be part of it, and we'll continue supporting the 3-0 policy, which is zero waste, zero carbon, and zero emissions. I hope I could answer your question. I did a lot of going around, but I hope I could hit some points. Thank you.
Thank you. Touseef, you seem ready to go. So maybe picking from what he said, which is a lot of work around what Omera as an organization has done. And now you, as having served as a mayor, right? What has your work, or what was your journey around energy transition, both for the community and maybe from a policy perspective?
It was a really challenging job when I was heading my city, Baramulla, which has more than a 1 lakh population. And what I believe that small steps can make big change. And I have, seen in my locality, and we try to aware people about the source segregation. We try to put a polythene ban in our city, and it was really challenging. And we tried to get a recycling plant that we can, waste management, we can do that. But I have seen in many conferences, we do a lot of dialogue, we talk a lot, but what we do practically when we go home. And I'll share an example with you. I was traveling and I saw a kid throwing his biscuit cover out of the school bus. So I tried to stop the vehicle and had conversation with them. So we need to protect our environment. We need to, it should be taught in the schools from the childhood, and even the mothers can play a very important role to tell them, look, we don't have to throw the garbage outside. We need to do more eco-friendly things, and we need to protect this environment. If there will be not clean air, so we'll all die. So it's the environment which gives us life. So like Tanzeem said, afforestation. We engaged with the local NGOs, the civil society, the youth, especially with the students of the different schools, to start afforestation. And we had afforestation camps, and then we did a survey where we saw the people throwing garbage to the river banks. So we try to stop them, and sometimes we try to put a fine on them. And it gets very difficult as a politician to find people. Otherwise, they will not vote you again. So it's a challenging job. But we tried our best, and I think we have to question ourselves to what we do to stop this. We talk a lot, we give lectures everywhere, but what is our contribution to our environment? Thank you.
So, thank you. I think we have a few minutes, which we'll give to the audience for questions. We'll take 3 questions from the audience. Then, as we come to wrap up.
Yeah, thank you very much. And let me, first of all, thank all the panelists for the excellent presentations. I don't have a question, but I have 1 or 2 brief comments on whatever has been stated here. First, I think, when we're talking also about, of course, compliments to you, to Bangladesh, for the initiatives that you have taken in the area of the cooking gas. Now, when we are talking about the Indo-Pacific, maybe we also need to see what are the best practices in some of the other countries, which can easily be adopted or adapted in different countries. And I would like to share with you, one of the initiatives that has been taken in India by the government. At the government level, it can be done. And the scheme is called Ujjwala Yojana, which means Ujjwala means a bright or radiant or lustrous scheme. And this provides free cooking gas stoves to rural households, particularly women. And so far, I was just sort of looking at the current numbers. It is more than 100 million cooking gas stoves that have been provided free of cost all over the country, of course. India is a big country, so 100 million is, but that's a significant number because, one gas stove going to one family of 4 or 5 people. So it really covers about 500 million people that has been covered. And more than 141 million free LPG gas cylinders have been provided, refills. So that helps a great deal. And that has, all the benefits that you mentioned, Tanzeem, that, in terms of health cost, in terms of environmental benefits. But in addition to that, what we observe in India, it has helped greatly in empowering women. Because, it has improved their health, it has improved their self-confidence, it has improved, and, in rural areas, giving 30%.
Kindly wrap up so that we're able to give everyone time.
But basically, I'm saying that these are some of the best practices that can be done. The other aspect, what Touseef, you mentioned, just one comment on that. I know when we are talking about in terms of pollution, global pollution levels, we do mention China and India in the same breath. That seems to be, have become. But actually, if you look at it in terms of the contribution, China provides more than 30% of the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. India provides just around 5%. In between, there is the United States, of course, about 18-20%. So there is a huge difference India's contribution per capita is just about 1 ton per year. China is more than 7 tons per year. So I think that is also some differentiation that possibly we could keep in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all the panelists. Wonderful questions. Heads up, I'll play the devil's advocate. I really loved all your presentations. The first question, I'm playing the devil's advocate. We need to make data public so that we can have targeted approaches in the rural populations. But even in our rural areas and in your rural areas, the level of education is very low. How can that be done? Because they won't be able to read. The solution is maybe more people get employed and go down to the rural areas. It'll probably have to be urban, upwardly mobile, educated people. But then that will entail transport costs, which will be vehicular pollution. So it's like a double-edged sword. How do we deal with this? That's the first thing. Second, we need regional cooperation in tackling the challenges we have. And we had the BBIN, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal transport corridor. But Bhutan pulled out because it sees Bangladesh and India as very big polluters. And Bhutan doesn't go that ways. So it pulled out. Now, how do we address it and how do we institutionalize this sort of regional cooperation? Because our partners see us as bigger polluters. So just those two questions. Thank you.
Broad question to all the three panelists. One is looking at issues of addressing the cost of air pollution systems. You talked about the cost. So is there any way of looking at public-private partnership in that? Likewise with LPG, when you look at the cost involved on public health, there are certain gases like nitrogen dioxide, formaldehyde. Are they really serious concerns? And the last is to you, when you're talking about flash floods and the deforestation which is occurring, what are the initiatives taken in terms of addressing, in terms of afforestation in the region to stop those floods? Just trying to keep it brief, but just wanted to know if there is a public-private partnership involved where you can have other stakeholders involved with the government and the people to bridge that gap. Thank you.
Thank you. One last question.
I would like to highlight some environment-friendly plants like water, money plant, Boston Fern, rubber plant, peel tree, and Dracena that reduce dust from the plant and purify air quality. My question is that how can we this gardening or planting popularize in the light of motivational approach and legal approach? Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's all we'll take for questions. Then to the panelists, you have each 1.5 minutes.
Let me first try to answer the first question you had on how we can make data public and how can we make people aware of the entire thing. So this is a very difficult task. I understand this, like awareing people from the rural areas is very difficult, but I think nowadays it is not that difficult to penetrate at the rural level with the information, especially because of internet and mobile usage, as well as television and other medias, right? So the thing is, when you can create a movement, it is easier to reach every people in the country, right? So right now there is so lack of data that even people from Dhaka, like the middle class or upper middle class people, also do not know enough about the problem, right? So you have to start from somewhere, and you'll also have to try to it has to come from the government. We can all do it collectively, the NGOs and others, but the government also has to play a role, like informing people on the issue, right? As Sir said, we can learn from our neighboring countries. We have best practices. China had been the biggest polluter probably, but they also tried to reduce since 2014 the level of air pollution they started causing. They took numbers of series of policy actions. Some of them proved helpful. So we can take the best practices, what worked, what other countries did, and try to adapt them. So that's one thing. On the second question that you had, I think I answered your question as well in this. But the second question is, being a public health researcher, probably I'm not the best person to answer that. How we can politically combine all the bring all the countries together. But as I said, this is a shared problem. This is not one country's problem. If Bangladesh or India is polluting the air, it is also affecting Bhutan and other countries. This is something that has to be conveyed as a region, not by individual countries.
Tanzeem, you'll pick up the one on public-private partnerships.
Thank you. Before going to public-private partnership or how we can work to create equitable access, so I would come to Sir's point regarding the subsidy or what's going on in India. So from a afforestation and clean air perspective, we can see LPG as a transition fuel, and we can group the others as traditional fossil fuels. In Bangladesh, at the consumer level, all the fossil fuels are subsidized. LPG is the only fuel that has no subsidy. And it is so interesting that the extent of fossil fuel subsidy was so high that the government was tapping into something called the Gas Development Fund to pool resource from there and subsidize the fossil fuels at the retail level. So now, due to economic issues, we have financing from the IMF. So we have to remove a lot of subsidies. So we have tried pitching it to the government earlier, including showing the Aadhaar system in India and all those systems in order to create subsidized access to LPG. But I think we can do it in the future, but we want to promote this kind of subsidies or support. You will be also happy to know we are supporting Indian Oil. We supply Indian Oil LPG from Bangladesh for all the 7 sisters. So Tripura, Mizoram, Manipur, all the 7 sisters, they purchase LPG from Bangladesh through land port, because moving it all the way from Kolkata, Haldia through the Chicken's Neck to the 7 sisters is a lot of transportation cost. Now coming to the private-public partnership, so we worked with the government of Bangladesh earlier in order to promote deep sea ports. So LPG is 99.99% imported. So if we could have a deep sea port where we could bring in larger sizes ships of LPG, it would substantially bring down the cost. So that was one aspect where we could work on the supply chain with the government, because these are large infrastructure projects. And on the second level, with the PPP, we are working with Energy Regulatory Commission to find out ways how we can make it easier for a wood user to buy LPG for the first time. We haven't finalized a modality yet. There's a lot of talks going on, but maybe we will shape up something in the next 1-2 years. Thank you. I hope I could answer the questions.
We saw huge deforestation in Kashmir in last 30 years because of the conflict, and we tried to engage local community and government institutions, NGOs to start afforestation, and it's a serious threat everywhere. And I believe that we should engage more people, engage local communities, aware children. It's a very important thing. So we can, do this for afforestation. And earlier I said that it's very important to teach our children, to teach our young people. So then we can get rid of this, inshallah. In future, we can see a green atmosphere, clean air. And as you said, sir, we need to push more to our government in Delhi or in states also to help us, thank you.
Thank you, our esteemed audience, for listening in this morning. And also to my panel here, thank you for your expert insights and also feeding into the discussion, making it so lively and so just informative, and for also honoring our invitation. And also a special thank you to the CGS team for yet another impeccable Bay of Bengal conversation and for having us on stage. Thank you.